tonight. Let's look backward, shall we, and remind ourselves of what was quite a pivotal moment in British history.
The commander of the operation has sent the following message. Be pleased to inform Her Majesty that the White Ensign flies alongside the Union Jack in South Georgia. God save the Queen.
What happens next, Mr. Knott?
Thank you very much.
What's your reaction,
Rejoice at that news and congratulate our forces and the Marines.
Are we going to declare war?
Yes, do you remember that? That was the then Defence Secretary John Knott and, of course, Margaret Thatcher. They were rejoicing, one of the key moments of the Falklands War. I do have to love her manner with the press there. Can you imagine Rishi Sunak talking like that to the media? Some would say perhaps they would appreciate if he did. Anyway, fast forward to today, and you'll be familiar with the fact we've got a new president in Argentina. He's called quite a few things by a few people. Here he is, waving a chainsaw around. He's promised to do an awful lot of things, so he has. But basically what he's saying is going to stop the banks from printing all this money that he reckons has got Argentina into the mess that it's currently in. Anyway, one of the other things that he mentions is that he reckons that the Falklands returning to Argentina is non-negotiable, saying that the territory is ideally, in his mind, anyway, and I can tell you now, you don't agree with this. Lots of you have already got in touch saying, what does he mean, return it back to Argentina? It's not theirs to begin with. Anyway, Rishi Sunak's having none of this. He says the sovereignty for the Falkland Islands is not up for debate. So there's absolutely no doubt that the Falkland Islands are indeed British. So with that in mind, let's cross now to a man I respect massively. I know many of you will too. I talk, of course, of the Falklands veteran Simon Weston, CBE, who joins me now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. What do you think when you hear the new president of Argentina talking like this about the Falkland Islands?
I think he's quite deluded, really. He needs to understand that they were the nation of states. They were never even a country when he claims that they were in charge of it. The fact is that the Falklands is an independent territory that chooses whose sovereignty they live under. And they choose our laws, they choose our flag, they choose our parliament. Sometimes I wonder whether that's wise, but they choose our parliament. And the right to self-determination, freedom and democracy, it's non-negotiable. We do not throw that away for them. The islanders choose to be British, and that's what they should have. It's not down to some guy who consults his psychic to find out how his dog is thinking about his decision making on what to do next, and that's a fact. That's what this guy does. But he's deluded. We see far too many power politics played in the world. We've only got to look at Mr. Putin and what he's done. And this guy is doing the same thing. They have robbed their military from any funding, so they've not got a military now. So, he can't threaten or offer that he's not going to threaten military action. They haven't got a military to provide any action. So I think that's a nonsense. And, this guy needs to check his reality, deal with the corruption in his own country first, and then start talking to people about how they can trade with, how they can work with people.
Yeah, and I mean, at this stage, just to be absolutely clear, he's talking about doing all of this diplomatically, he says. One of my viewers has been in touch, Gary. He says, Michelle, the Falklands are strategically important to the UK. Do not underestimate it. He says, I was serving when we liberated them last time, and I wouldn't hesitate doing it all again if we needed to. Do you think that is a sentiment that would be echoed by many veterans?
I think most of us are way too old now, but the sentiment is correct. Look, these are British subjects. They want to be British. They have their own autonomy, and they should be entitled to sleep soundly in their beds at night. It's not for somebody from a country that has got raging inflation because of the corruption of that country. These people should not have this inflicted on them. And people who say, give the islands back to the Argentinians, they never belonged to the Argentinians. Get your history correct. People have tried over the last 5-10 years to cancel history or alter history by the removal of different effigies. The fact of the matter is the Falklands never belonged to the Argentinians. They've only ever belonged to France and Britain. France, they couldn't make it work. We put Scottish families in there that did make it work. And the fact of the matter is the islanders have had a referendum where 97% of the islanders said they wanted to remain under British sovereignty. That's about as decisive as you can get. And the Argentinians who were based in the Falklands were asked why they live there. And they were the ones who were the 3%. They were asked why they lived there. And they said, oh, because of the education, because of the health service, and because the police are not corrupt. And then they said, why did you vote? One of my friends asked them, why did you vote to be Argentinian then? And they couldn't answer him. Why would you want to throw up the democracy that they've got? And they've got a thriving community. They have a real stable lifestyle there. Why would you want to throw that away and go with a country that has clearly proven itself over the years to have such corrupt politicians?
Well, there you go. That is indeed the billion-dollar question. And I think perhaps the answer to that will be that they absolutely don't want to do that. But for now, Simon Weston, thank you very much for your time. A man that I respect greatly. Thank you. What's your thoughts on this whole topic?
Well, I think Simon said everything, pretty well everything, and explained it. You know, it's a long time ago. It seems to have gone so quickly. But where he's absolutely right, you know, you've got a self-governing British overseas territory, and that is how it should remain. I think it's a great tragedy because you've got this wonderful country called Argentina, and up until, you know, 100 years ago or even less than that, I mean, we did 10% of our trade was with Argentina. People may remember corned beef from Fray Bentos corned beef, and they helped, you know, they used to export that to the UK during the war. And, of course, then their politics sort of declined, and then the military junta came in with Galtieri, which caused the Falklands. And they seem to have lurched after that. And now, obviously, they've got a new leader in who, it's not up for debate, but I'm not surprised at all, because very often in these countries there will be a specific subject that they'll use. Yeah,
Grant Shapps as well, he was talking tough on his Twitter today. He was basically having absolutely none of it, I can tell you that. Atul, what do you make to it all?
I think Simon said it all. The one question I would have, even though the Argentinians don't have much of a military, you can fit our entire army now into Wembley Stadium and still not fill Wembley. We don't have carriers that can operate independently of French equipment and French materials. So even if this slightly loopy-looking character who's now come to power in Argentina put 10 troops down, what would happen?
Well, what would happen? Because if you'd have gone back, I don't know, said two years ago and say, what do you think ever in this country this would happen, that would happen? Most of the stuff that's happened in this country over the last few years, you wouldn't have been able to make up. So these days, I actually don't rule out anything, which is not a good position to be in. I dread to think what might happen. This fella, by the way, this Javier that we're talking about in Argentina, he's referred to often as El Loco, the madman, just to give you an idea of some of his policies. They are pretty out there, I can tell you now. He apparently, although he disputes this, apparently he wants to make it able to sell body parts, organs. He says that isn't one of his policies, but many dispute that and say it absolutely is. He wants to ditch the local currency. He wants to privatise the state energy company. He wants to abolish abortion. You know, he's really been described as quite far right, isn't he?
Well, the thing is, if the title read, you know, we have a new far-left president for Argentina, it's never really a debate if somebody's far-left. They're always described, get all of these lunatics that are elected in places at times, they're always described as far-right.
Well, we get that.
And, he is far-right.
But don't forget...
There are far-left.
Of course there are. They're dictators, and they are, and like Stalin Stalin wasn't far-right, but he was still a dictator. Do you see what I mean? You get these extreme characters. And then, of course, you've got all of these things he's apparently going to do. We have no idea. I mean, fortunately, we don't have to select the president of our country in that way. I think the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day, and the electorate then will see if this person is the right one for them.
Well, I
wouldn't
can tell
fancy
you,
it myself, really, in this country.
He got voted in 56% of the vote, and it was quite a shock to some people. I can tell you that he took his position. What do you make to him, and what do you make to that Falklands question?